All right, man, peace. The Golden State Warriors have been the creme de la creme of the NBA for going on 4 years now. This regular season, they seem to be mostly just going through the paces, despite the fact that they've been over 30 games above the 500 mark for the majority of the season. After the All-Star break, it seems as if their intention is to turn it up another notch, which was on full display when they faced the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that they've had a great rivalry with for the past 3 years or so, particularly since they added the number one piece that the Oklahoma City Thunder had, that being Mr. Kevin Durant. In the first two meetings between the Golden State Warriors and the Oklahoma City Thunder this season, Oklahoma City was able to flex on the Warriors. They were able to impact them physically. And, of course, the Golden State Warriors, now that they're in playoff mode or semi-playoff mode, wanted to reverse field and do the same thing to the Thunder that was done to them. And what occurred was they broke the spirit of the Thunder. Everyone is making a big deal about Zaza Pachulia falling on Russell Westbrook, as opposed to them noting what they should be noting, which is that Golden State pulled Oklahoma City's card. Oklahoma City got their whole card pulled. That's what happened. They were acting like hoes throughout the whole game. It wasn't just Russell. They pulled the card on Paul George. They pulled the card on Carmelo Anthony, who looks like an old man. One of the ways that you know when an athlete is getting old is when it takes him more steps to get to a certain spot than it should. Well, when he was young, it may have taken him 3 or 4 steps. Now it takes him 5 or 6. That's a big difference in the professional sports world, especially when you're talking about the elite teams. But anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
All right, speaking of needing help, Saturday night it was Warriors Thunder round 3. OKC won the first time around, but Golden State stomped them out this time around with a 32-point win. But that wasn't the only story. Zaza Pachulia back at it again. So Russell Westbrook attacked the rim and missed a shot, falling to the floor. Pachulia was standing upright when Westbrook ran down, but ultimately ended up falling on the defending MVP's legs. Here's Russ and KD on what went down.
Did you see it? What it look like?
It looked like you were wearing a carpet for a coat. That's what it looked like, brother. damn Zaza. I'm looking at the damn jacket. It looked like you were wearing a jacket made out of bubblegum carpet. What the hell is going on with you, brother? I got love for you, but goddamn.
What it like? Did anybody touch him?
Well, Nick Young kind of hit him in the back of his leg. Let me say this about Zaza. Is Zaza dirty? Absolutely. He's a dirty player. He's one of those guys that you make excuses for if he's on your team and you despise if he's not on your team. Those guys have been in the NBA since time immemorial. Going back to the 80s, in the early 80s, you had guys like ML Carr and the Celtics. In the late 80s, of course, you had Rick Mahorn and Bill Laimbeer on the Pistons. In the 90s, you had players like Greg Anthony on the Knicks. You've always had guys who were looking to take dirty shots at dudes. Zaza Pachulia is just one in a long line of dirty players in the NBA who have been able to stick around because they're willing to do shit that other people are not willing to do. It's always been that way. Players like Russell Westbrook have to transcend those players. Why is that? Because more is expected of him than is expected of Zaza Pachulia. It's like when you were a kid and you were in class, you were smart, you were intelligent, you made good decisions. You were judged more harshly for making a mistake than the class clown, than the class idiot, because no one really expected anything from him. So you were held to a higher standard. Same thing with Russell. Russell needs to worry about being able to execute a real offense in a half-court set, other than that super athletic bullshit that he becomes accustomed to, where when you're placed in an adverse situation, a pressurized situation against a top playoff team, that shit doesn't work. Yeah, it's great. You know, game 65 of the regular season, you go against the Orlando Magic, you have 45 points, 17 assists, 16 rebounds. SportsCenter says this has never been done since Oscar Robertson back in 1964. Everybody claps. All that bullshit doesn't matter at this point. It's about what does Russell do against the top teams. And over again, he shows that he does not have the brain to match his physique. His physical gifts are as great as he is lacking in mental on-court basketball acuity. It is what it is. They can talk about Zaza all day. I don't give a damn. All those guys got their cards pulled.
Yes or no?
I didn't see the replay yet.
Oh, you didn't see it? But why you asking about something you didn't see?
I just saw
Well, then, if you didn't see it, don't ask me a question.
I see that bubblegum carpet jacket you got on, brother. That's what I see.
Don't ask me dumb questions, man. Obviously, it was intentional.
He need to ask you where you got that jacket from. I think that would be an even dumber question.
So don't ask me, was it intentional? Nobody touched me, fell over my leg, tried to hurt me.
He is clumsy. He is wrong. A lot of the big guys are. But I watched the tape. I seen Nick's foot get caught up. His Zaza's leg, it might have tripped him up a bit. I don't think he's trying to hurt Russ.
Well, no, I disagree. I believe that he was trying to fall on Russ's leg. That's kind of obvious. But yes, Zaza Pachulia is very clumsy. And let me say this for the people who might be totally incredulous on the possibility that Zaza was knocked over by Nick Young. Please keep in mind, this is the same Zaza Pachulia who hurt his own teammate in Kevin Durant last season, where he was out for like up to a month and a half, I believe it was. I think he was out like 6 weeks. And then he almost fell into Steph Curry's knees a couple of times. Like, he's just a big oaf, man. Zaza's somebody that they need in the playoffs, though. He's the guy who's going to handle his business physically against other teams. He's the guy that they'll put against Nene when they face the Rockets. He's the guy that they'll put against Gasol if and when they play the Spurs. He's that guy. They need him. They need somebody with a physical presence. Because they, other than Draymond, they don't have one. And you can't have Draymond doing the dirty work and the hard work. Now, when I say dirty work, I'm not just talking about diving for loose balls and blocking people out in the paint. I'm talking about throwing elbows and intimidating people coming down the lane. That's Zaza's job.
All right, let's just keep in mind Pachulia's history, including his involvement in Kawhi Leonard's ankle injury, of course, last season. Kyrie also weighed in, replying to an IG post saying the league has to look at this. That bleep is ridiculous.
Yes, Damian Lillard also chimed in. You'll notice that many of these other guards will chime in on any issue regarding the Warriors because if they can, they want to put a bug in the league's ear to scrutinize the Warriors in any way possible because they're going to need all the help they can get. Because if Golden State locks in, nobody can beat them.
Max, do you like that KD's defending him here?
Yeah, first of all, Kyrie is right. But KD has to defend him. It's his teammate.
He definitely does have to defend him. But in KD's defense, there is also enough quantifiable evidence to make a plausible case that Zaza is just a big clumsy idiot. As I've already stated, he fell into KD's knee. We know he didn't take KD out on purpose. I've seen a couple of games where he almost fell into Steph's knees. He's just totally uncoordinated.
They're trying to win a championship. Pachulia is there mainly to intimidate the other team's star. Look, Pachulia's like a pitcher in baseball who throws not at a guy but behind his head. You know, because the natural inclination is to fall away. So if you throw behind a guy's head, you're trying to hit him in the head. You know, that's like that. You're trying to seriously hurt someone.
Yeah, you have guys like that who come through the NBA. There have been guys like that. For those of you who remember Bill Laimbeer, he was one of the dirtiest players to ever come through the league. Like, he used to try to hurt people. Same thing with Zaza. You have guys like that every generation. Every generation you have players who fill a certain lot. Just like you have the super talented players, you have the guys who go really hard and gritty on defense. You have the guys who are dirty, so on and so forth.
Pachulia, what is it going to take? Like, this stuff has no place in the NBA. What is it going to take? Is he going to have to officially just end one of the NBA's brightest lights career? Right? He did this to Kawhi Leonard. He's now done this to Russell Westbrook. What is it going to take? You know why Russell Westbrook was so hot after the game?
Because his team had a terrible performance. That's why. They performed terribly. And to be quite frank with you, I would say that was the best thing that could have happened to the OKC Thunder. But I don't think as a team that they're intelligent enough to learn lessons. I just don't. And it starts from Westbrook, who seems like a very intelligent guy off the court, but on the court, he's just not intelligent. And I don't think that their team is intelligent enough to learn lessons like this. The lesson that they should learn is that there are levels to play in this league, in the NBA. And they thought that because they blew the Golden State Warriors out twice, that they were going to just be able to do that in the postseason. Because they'd blown the Warriors out, they said to themselves when they would lose games to teams that they were supposed to beat, oh, well, we're just having trouble getting up for this game. But when we play the top teams, we beat them. What that blowout showed them is, wow, maybe we're not as good as we thought. Maybe we need to work on our half-court execution. Because Golden State got up in their ass defensively and they could not handle it. They got very frustrated. Paul George got very frustrated. He went 1 for 14 or whatever it was, 1 for 15. Carmelo was ripping off his headband because Draymond slapped him upside the head by mistake. He was trying to get into fights with Kevin Durant. Carmelo once again showed you why he is not a marquee player, never has been, never will be. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame one day, but he has never been a great player. I don't care who says what. I watched this man his whole career. He is not a great player, never has been. What he is he's a very good half-court shooter. That's all he is. He's not a full-court player. In a half-court offense, he can get hot on the elbow. That's it.
Because it's not just that Pachulia's fouling him or doing something dangerous. Blake Griffin will go up in the air. It's like everyone in the league thought it was okay to try to take him out. But
that was Blake's fault. Blake should have hooked off on somebody early on in his career. Got a good little suspension just to show guys, I'm not no easy win. He should have did that early. He didn't do that early, so now he's been getting punked for the last 7-8 years. That's Blake's fault. Blake should have hooked off on somebody. Sometimes you have to take an ass whooping. If you got to take an ass whooping just to let people know that it's not going to be an easy win. Doesn't matter whether you win or lose the fight. It's just about letting them understand that, no, it's not going to be worth all that for you to try to be dirty with me. You might beat me, I might beat you, but either way, you're going to understand that you're not going to be dirty with me unless you want to fight.
But there's a way to do it where you're really trying to maybe end a guy's career. When you fall on a guy's legs the way Pachulia does, you're trying to hurt him. You're trying to injure him. The defense that he was not intentional is so weak. That's why Westbrook is so hot. It's not like Westbrook fears some physical pain going into the paint among the trees, taking his lumps. That's not the kind of player Westbrook is. But he's like, time out. This dude is going to end my career. Now,
I'm sure he's very frustrated by that. And that's reasonable. But the real reason why he was so upset was because they got their ass whooped.
Now, KD defending Pachulia is interesting, of course, because in a way that's going at Westbrook. But I don't see it like that.
I don't see it like that either. I don't believe that he was going at Westbrook. I think, number one, he was just defending his teammate. Number two, he knows that Pachulia's, let's be honest, Pachulia looked like he was born half retarded. He looked like the Most High was going to make him retarded and then change his mind at the last minute. The man looked like his last name should be Frankenstein, right? He's lucky to be able to be walking around without his feet in braces, okay? Pachulia's fortunate that he grew up to be about 6'9", 6'10", so that he can go to the NBA. He's just not coordinated at all. He's a very clumsy person, and as I've stated, he took out KD last year, his own teammate, and he damn near took out Steph Curry.
I see KD put in a position where he must defend his teammate. They're trying to win a championship right now. What else is KD supposed to say?
I don't blame KD for his answer. I just wish the reporter hadn't wasted our time by asking him that question. What the hell is he going to say? Of course he's going to come to the defense of his teammate. He's not going to go, take them seriously when Kevin Durant or another player comes out and say, you know what, my teammate's dirty. Take that seriously.
I love to see that interview. Hey, what's up with Zaza? Oh, he's a dirty bastard. I hope the NBA finds him and suspends him.
But we all know that's not going to happen. They're not going to say that about Zaza Pachulia. I'm interested in what the league is going to do about this because last year was the playoffs with Kawhi Leonard. This year, it was a nationally televised game that involved the league MVP. We had a 3-point game, 5-point game rather, that turned into a 32.
Another reason why Zaza would do that to a Russell Westbrook is because he knows he can get in Westbrook's head. Westbrook is extremely aggressive, but he's someone who you could take off his square. The same energy that galvanizes him is the same energy that can be used to distract him. He plays off of anger. And because he's not a good decision maker on the court and he's not a good jump shooter, you can use that anger against him because you can get him to take shots that he shouldn't take. We've seen this over and over again in Westbrook's career. When the game starts to get out of hand, he just wants to start driving the basketball and take bad shots. He gets his teammates out of the game because they become more infatuated with watching him than running a real offense. Part of it's his fault. Part of it's his coach's fault. Many of these coaches are intimidated by him. He's like a mini LeBron.
32-point annihilation, an absolute blowout. And I don't blame Russell Westbrook one bit for being as hot as he was.
You guys never blame Westbrook for anything. I've yet to see you guys blame him for any damn thing. You act like he's God's gift to the NBA.
He's absolutely right. No one touched Pachulia. Nobody touched him.
That's not true. Nick Young hit him in the back of the leg. And when you watch that rear replay, Nick Young actually dragged his leg alongside the back of Pachulia's leg. So it's conceivable that a big clumsy oaf like him could have fell over. Now, do I believe that he purposefully landed on top of Westbrook's knees and his ankle? Yes, I do. And I believe that he tried to put as much weight on Westbrook's leg as possible. If not to break it, at least to send a message to Westbrook. Watch me. Watch for me whenever you drive the lane. Because I'm here and I will try to hurt you.
And all of a sudden, you just fall right on his leg. Your entire body, just the weight of your body, falls right on his leg. That's not an accident. And not only that, I think the league, you have to take this into account. We saw how Russell Westbrook reacted. And he should have reacted that way. He should have been utterly disgusted. We also saw Golden State essentially incriminate itself in this regard. Did you see how physical they were with Oklahoma City?
Absolutely. They got up in Oklahoma City's ass. From the opening whistle, from the first tip, they were up in their ass. They were there to show them the team that you faced those first two times, that's not the team that you're going to face tonight. So I'm looking very much forward to the last game that they play against OKC in OKC to see if they bring that same level of intensity.
I'm not knocking them. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking Golden State. I would have done the same thing that they did overall in terms of KD getting in Melo's face and Draymond getting physical with Melo. Paul George shooting 1 of 14.
Paul George once again showing that when the going gets tough, he gets running. That's what he showed.
Golden State was trying to send a message. We're tired of playing with y'all. Y'all beat us.
Absolutely. I couldn't have put it better myself. Stephen A. That is exactly what Golden State showed them. We tired of playing games with y'all niggas. Now, we gave y'all a C effort the first two games. We're going to give you our A game tonight, and let's see how you respond.
Beat us the first 2 times this year. We're going to put an end to this nonsense right now.
Absolutely.
And remind y'all who the kings of this league are right now. Enough of this nonsense.
Absolutely.
So I get where they were coming from. But I'm saying the whole tenor of the game that you witnessed by other players sort of lent itself towards this belief of what Golden State's mentality was going into that particular confrontation.
Well, what I will disagree with you on, Stephen A, is that there's a big difference between physicality and being dirty. Dirty players are going to be dirty whether the game is physical or not. Physicality is a mindset that you carry into the game as a team, and hopefully, if that's your intention, you can keep that going for the entire game. A dirty player is looking for moments where they could be dirty. When you're trying to be physical, you want to be physical every moment of the entire game. There's a big difference between being dirty and being physical.
So if you've got that kind of mentality, that falls right in line with who Zaza Pachulia is and what his role is with this team. That's right up his alley, which to me easily explains what he did to Russell Westbrook. But if you're the league, you got Kawhi Leonard, you got Russell Westbrook, and you know who else you have, Max? You have Greg Popovich, who felt the need to come out and call out Zaza Pachulia the way that he did once he did that to Kawhi Leonard last year. You don't see Greg Popovich doing that, particularly to a team coached by one of his great friends in this league.
You know, everybody makes such a big deal when Pachulia looked down on Westbrook. I think that he looked down on him with such disdain because he assumed that Westbrook was trying to sell some type of a flagrant foul call. Westbrook is a big flopper. You know, even though a lot of these guys in the media like to give him all this credit for being so super tough, and he is a tough player, don't get me wrong, but he loves to flop, and he loves to sell calls too. And when you watch this play, you'll see that Pachulia did not even bump him that hard. He was going after the basketball. Once again, I'm not trying to say that Pachulia is not dirty. He's very dirty. But this play right here was not a dirty play. He was trying to take the ball from him.
in Steve Kerr, whose son works for Greg Popovich. I mean, for Popovich to come out like that against Zaza Pachulia last year speaks volumes to me about how Zaza Pachulia is thought.
Yo, Pachulia looked at him like, look at this little bitch. Oh, man, that's funny.
Thought of in the National Basketball Association. And that's the kind of things that I think that cannot go unnoticed. You, the league, you have to address Zaza and some of these tactics because
This motherfucker named Zaza.
because guys are getting hurt when they go against this dude.
You have to. And by the way, there's nothing wrong with having an enforcer on your team, a physical presence that makes guys
That's embarrassing. You got your ass whooped by somebody named Zaza.
is physically intimidated. But the reason I use the pitching analogy is if you have a pitcher who just says, the inside of the plate is mine, I'm throwing hard and I'm throwing in there, I'm going to brush you back. No one has a problem with that. That's part of the game. It's the pitcher that throws behind the guy's head, where it's like, whoa, hold on a second. You trying to take me out? This, not only forget about, needless to say, the guy has a life, he'd like to live, but also a career. You're trying to end my career is how I feed my family, not to mention my life. That pitcher is a problem. The guy who throws behind the guy's head. So if Pachulia was the kind of guy who's just establishing the inside of the plate, that's one thing. That's not what he's doing. He is falling on guys' legs. And Zaza, you're not slick. It's not like a single person on earth who's not deluding themselves, maybe because they root for the Golden State Warriors, doesn't know what you're doing. It's totally obvious. That's what Westbrook is reacting to, and that's what the league has to take into consideration. Like, what is the alternative? Does every team need to now carry their own enforcer to answer back when Pachulia does something like this? Is that really what the league wants? Because if I had a championship roster constructed, one I thought was competing for a title, I'd have to burn a roster spot on a guy specifically to answer Pachulia, to protect my players.
Yeah, but you know what? If you have to burn a roster spot to get a thug on your team who's going to be your 12th or 13th man, that's not that big a deal. The Bulls used to have a couple thugs on their team, and guys like Ed Neely and people like that. That's not that big a deal. Not to say that is something that the NBA wants, but it's not the be-all and the end-all.
Because what he's doing is absurd. You can have a tough guy, you can have an enforcer, a so-called goon who doesn't do things that could potentially end in career-ending injury. This needs to be addressed right now.
Well, I think that there's a distinction between a tough guy and a goon. Tough guys are guys like Charles Oakley and the Davis boys, the pair of power forwards who played on the Pacers in the mid-'90s. P.J. Brown, those guys were tough guys. Goons are people like Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, Zaza Pachulia. Those guys are goons. Then the difference being that they will not shy away from being dirty. They actually prefer to be dirty.
Well, to speak to that issue, let's keep in mind that you ain't a real enforcer if you do the kind of things that he did. He undercut Kawhi Leonard, and he just flailed his body on top of Russell Westbrook. When I think about enforcers, I think about the late Maurice Lucas. I think about the Charles Oakleys of the world. I think about the Xavier McDaniels of the world and various others.
I agree.
And these were guys, their method of intimidation was being physical, sure, but getting in your face and letting you know what time it was and protecting their star player. You wanted to get at Patrick Ewing or Michael Jordan before him, you were going to have to go through Oakley. He wasn't having it.
That's right.
Those kind of stuff, that's entirely different than what appears
and you know what the problem is?
Cheap shots. That's the difference.
You know why
Zaza Pachulia is no tough guy in that regard.
You know why
You know why
the league has to address this now? Because, in boxing, Stephen A., if a guy hits another guy low and continues to do it and the ref doesn't do anything about it, what does the guy who gets hit low do? What does he do? You're supposed to hit low back. You're supposed to. If the rules aren't going to be enforced and a guy hits you low, you hit him low right back to let him know.
Yes, that's very true. I remember Floyd Mayweather fought a bout against Carlos Lorena back in, I believe it was 1999, and Carlos Lorena was hitting him low. Floyd never once complained to the ref. He just started hitting him back low. And then he knocked him down twice, I believe, in the first round. Great fight. That was Pretty Boy Floyd in his prime. But as Kellerman says, for most great fighters especially, if they're getting hit low and the ref does nothing about it, they're going to bring in their own justice. They're going to institute their own method of justice.
Let them know. That is the reaction. That's how it works in sports. If the rules aren't going to be enforced, teams take it into their own hands. Is what the league wants an enforcer on every team to answer Zaza Pachulia? Because if not, they got to get this right quickly.
Yeah.
Look, let me say this quickly. They're trying to make Zaza out to be, the Iceman, the famous hitman from the mafia. Zaza is dirty, but he's nowhere near as prolific as many of the players from the 80s who were literally being dirty every game. Every once in a while, Zaza falls over himself. Sometimes he targets certain players. Remember him and Westbrook, they do have an issue. They have a little beef going back to last season. Does he cross over the edge? Absolutely. But it's not like every team is going to have to fill a roster spot to go up against Zaza. Guys playing 10 minutes a game. I mean, give me a break.
OKC won the first two meetings, but the Warriors squashed that a chippy, spirited 32-point win on Saturday night. Max, I'll start with you. Does this game say more about OKC or Golden State?
Well, before Max chimes in, let me say that it certainly says more about, in my opinion, OKC than it does Golden State. We've already established what Golden State is over the last 3 seasons. We know that they're championship caliber. What was established in this last game is that OKC is nowhere near as close to challenging Golden State for a title as we may have thought based off their first 2 performances in the regular season. It's clear that Golden State was just going through the motions, and they restored order in this last game. And not only that, they made OKC lose their composure. That showed me that in an adverse situation, in a big spot, they're not going to respond because they don't have the brain trust, meaning the coach and the point guard. They also don't have championship caliber experience. Paul George and Carmelo Anthony are an example of what I call pretenders. These are guys who float around professional sports leagues and they try to approximate greatness, but they're not great. Neither one of them. The both of them have to be third options on a championship level team. Paul George is young enough that he could still be a second option, but he has to be behind a championship level alpha. That's a LeBron James. That's a Steph Curry. And that may be it, to be quite frank with you. Maybe a James Harden. I think that him and James Harden on the right team with the right mix, say, for example, if Paul George was in Houston right now with D'Antoni as coach, that he could be a second option to James Harden. They would be a championship contender. But I don't consider Harden particularly an alpha. I mean, to be quite honest with you, there's not that many alphas in the NBA right now. It's really not. Kyrie has the alpha mentality. He's just not big enough to really compete mano a mano. LeBron, I will call him an alpha just because of his championship level experience. But intrinsically, he struggles with a lot of feminine energy. Same thing with Kevin Durant. Steph Curry's problem is that he struggles with sometimes being too docile because of his religious programming. He struggles with being too docile sometimes. But he's a semi-alpha. Westbrook has the mentality of the alpha, but his basketball IQ is just too low. He's too frenetic. He does not know how to calm his mind. Back in the 80s and 90s, the NBA was filled with alphas. Bird, Magic, Jordan, Isaiah Thomas, those were all the way alphas. Hakeem Olajuwon, all the way alphas. If Barkley was in the league today, he would be more alpha than anybody in the NBA right now in regards to overall mentality, aggressiveness, and being able to lead a team. He'd be the number 1 alpha in the NBA right now. I don't think he'd be the number 1 player. I think that LeBron is better than Barkley ever was. And you can make the case that Kevin Durant is better overall than Barkley ever was. It's close, though. But there's not that many alphas in the NBA today. And then you have the pretenders, people like Carmelo Anthony and Paul George, some of these other guys floating around the NBA, masquerading as stars when they're really not, or superstars when they're really not.
State, because you blink. I mean, you blink with Golden State, and a close game becomes a blowout. And the reason is they have 3 of the best offensive players, let alone shooters, or in the league, obviously in Steph and KD and Klay Thompson. And even Draymond Green, as a result of those guys, shoots, nowadays we're numb to it. Remember when Kevin Love would shoot like 35, 36% from three, and we're like, oh my God, a big who can do that? What about Draymond Green? It's just ridiculous. It's unfair. As I mentioned, this is Kenny Smith's point, halftime a couple days ago, Steph Curry, Stephen A., you called him correctly, greatest shooter of all time. A mobile artillery unit, Steve Nash 2.0. You can't double him. He never gets doubled. It's just ridiculous. And what you saw is against another, I think it's fair to say the Thunder are a Western Conference powerhouse, at least potentially.
I wouldn't call them that. I would say that they're a Western Conference contender, low-level contender. I still view them as a physical threat to the Warriors in a 7-game series, meaning they'll take out their half pound of flesh. I could see them winning 2 games against the Warriors in the playoffs. But that last game showed me that mentally they're just not ready. When they face adversity, they crumble. And once again, it comes from their brain trust, the coach and the point guard. They don't know what to do when things are not going their way because they don't execute in a half-court set. I tell you what, though, that Steven Adams, he's very underrated. He's a great utility big man. He'd be perfect on Golden State, perfect, because he rim runs, he protects the basket, and he will provide a physical presence that they would need. But he's way outside of their pay grade.
You blink, game over. It's like the Coyote and the Roadrunner, Stephen A. Remember, the Coyote was fast, like the Thunder, like he was good. He could almost catch the Roadrunner, and then the Roadrunner shows you, Mimi, he was playing with him. Gone, cloud of dust. That's Golden State.
I bet you when Max thinks of these whack-ass metaphors and analogies, he thinks that he's hitting something. I can see why they bring Will Kane in all the time, because Max is all over the place.
Well, I don't disagree with you, but my focus is on OKC, and here's why. Credit to you because you were talking about the explosiveness of the Golden State Warriors, which we all knew, but you stated it, and that was that. I looked at OKC, and I tried to give them some credit. Paul George is a star. Paul George has been playing like a star. I get it. But boy, did he pick a bad night to have a bad night. 1 for 14 shooting.
Did he really pick a bad night to have a bad night, Stephen A., or is this just who he is? Is he just a guy who comes up small in big spots?
Absolutely anemic. Nothing would fall. That happens. But it wasn't as simple as that. When you take into account anybody from a Klay Thompson to a Draymond Green to a Kevin Durant, even to a Sean Livingston or an Andre Iguodala, it's not just that they're going to help in terms of doubling. The length that they have on the defensive end of the floor.
And they also understand the defensive chain principle. They're all connected. They're all communicating. They're staying in their positions. They're not getting out of place. That is what made OKC feel so frustrated. When you're playing against a defense like that, you have to find the open shooter, and the open shooter has to make his shot. That's the only way that you can attempt to create some type of disconnect in that defensive chain. OKC does not shoot the ball from the outside well enough to fracture the Golden State defense. And when the Golden State defense gets going, it turns into fast break points. And then you're talking about a team that's the best shooting team in the NBA. Golden State leads the league in three-point percentage, free throw percentage. So they have the highest offensive proficiency in the NBA, and now they're getting fast break points. Next thing you know, you're down 25.
Is incredibly formidable, which means that it calls upon your stars to play like stars. Now, Zaza Pachulia contributing to Russell Westbrook going down, no doubt contributed to their demise. This is a 5-point game, and then the next thing you know, they exploded once Russell Westbrook was out. But you have to also take into account the fact that OKC really didn't have anything other than their big three. You had guys on the court who could do absolutely nothing offensively. And Golden State doesn't have that problem. And guess why? I'm not even talking about the starters. Of course, Steph Curry's obvious. Kevin Durant's obvious. Klay Thompson's obvious. What about Swaggy P, Nick Young?
Yeah, he's a problem. Swaggy P is going to have at least one game in the playoffs where he scores 20 points. Because he's getting wide open threes. And he's not a shooter on the level of Steph or Klay. But Swaggy P could fill it up, especially if he gets hot.
I don't think people have recognized what this dude can give you off the bench in this system for this team. It makes them incredibly formidable. If you're OKC, you got to be able to do one or two things. You got to be able to get some production from somebody other than your big three, or you have to be able to defend. And what I saw was a team that could really go at Golden State, particularly with the big three. That was not the case Saturday night. Without Russell Westbrook, they were lost souls. Now, chances are you're not going to be without Russell Westbrook, so we'll see. But I certainly expected more from them. But in the blink of an eye, it went from a competitive game to an annihilation. And I'm
right. But how many times does that happen with Golden State, Steve? That's been going on for 4 years. This has been going on since before Kevin Durant got there. That's why I stated this game did not teach me anything about Golden State that we should not have already known. It showed me that the OK3 are nowhere near ready to compete with them for a championship. They're just not.
I'm literally talking, Max. All I did was go into my kitchen and make me a cup of hot chocolate. All right.
No cereal?
And Max, I came back and it went from 5, no crunch berries, just a hot chocolate. It went from 5-point deficit to a 24-point deficit when all I did was go to grab the hot chocolate that I had left in the kitchen and then walk back. I'm trying to tell you, it was that damn quick. I couldn't believe it. That's what happens, and that's the problem.
The Coyote was fast. Sometimes you say Coyote's fast. Coyote would dust a lot of other desert animals, I'm sure, right?
Max, please go pop some pills and drink some water and take a time out. Because I don't know what the fuck you're talking about right now. We talking about basketball. This dude talking about National Geographic. Look, Golden State right now, they're primed to make a big run. They're primed. Everybody's talking about the Houston Rockets. I think that the Rockets are pretty much played as well as they can play. Golden State is still only a half game back in the loss, and they're a game back in the loss column, half game back overall. I think that Golden State is going to find a way to pull ahead of them. But it's very important for the Houston Rockets from a psychological perspective to end the season with a better record than the Golden State Warriors.
Right? But when the Roadrunner thinks he's getting close, meet, cloud of dust, he's gone. Now, I will say this. Kawhi Leonard in the playoffs, he was on the floor, and they were beating the brakes off of Golden State. Then suddenly Kawhi Leonard wasn't on the floor, and that was the end of the series. Yeah, well, that's a whole different issue. We're talking about San Antonio. They're like the opposite end of the spectrum from OKC. OKC has a very low basketball IQ. San Antonio, you can make the case they have an even higher basketball IQ than Golden State. They just don't have the talent that Golden State has. Their brain trust is impeccable. So they're not going to beat themselves. You have to beat them. So does Russell Westbrook's presence or absence affect whether or not Golden State can go on a run? Of course it does. Of course it does. But I do think Golden State's capable of going on those kind of explosive runs no matter who's on the floor. They just shoot the ball too well.
Mm-hmm. Golden State and then everybody else. Gentlemen,
But anyway, that's the issue with Golden State and the OKC Thunder. We'll see if OKC is able to raise their level of play, of performance, of mental acuity, basketball IQ down the stretch of the season. I surely doubt it. This to me has pretty much been an experiment that has failed. I don't see Paul George coming back next season. I certainly don't see Carmelo Anthony coming back next season, but I don't think anybody cares where Carmelo Anthony is going. Carmelo's not a player who was built to age well because he's so one-dimensional. If he's smart, he'll sign with a team like Houston and for a highly reduced rate and see what he could do there. He may even go to San Antonio and try to take maybe even a bench role with San Antonio. Who knows? But he will certainly not be back with OKC. And Paul George, I think, is going to go to the LA Lakers. May even team up with LeBron. But anyway, peace.